Hey guys, Youngblood with you. And while it may not sound like me, it is me. I'm a little bit under the weather. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Polaris and specifically why I think it ended up getting torpedoes instead of a railgun. Now, when we talk about those two options, they're really kind of the two most common ones that we see as far as the anti-big ship capable weapons. You know, a railgun we see on some of the Idris models, on the torpedoes we see in things like the Retaliator. But ultimately what they do is they're the two big devastating weapons classes that we actually have in the game. So starting out, when we talk about the railgun, it's a weapon that I think really just requires alignment and probably is going to have a long cooldown time between uses. And what that ends up meaning from a gameplay perspective is that it means that you have to stay in place for longer than you may want to do. That's probably a role that's more suited to like the Idris, where it's got better armor, better shields, and a fighter contingent that can help support it being in place for longer. Now, getting alignment with a railgun may be easier on a Polaris because it's smaller and more agile and it's less of the plotting course type of flight mechanics that you're going to have on an Idris. But if you have a ship that's easier to get alignment, then we start crossing over into a balancing perspective where it may be a little bit OP in the scheme of the design from having a Polaris being able to easily pinpoint where it wants to use the almighty railgun. Now, torpedoes just really are going to require you to lock and launch. It's a simple missile mechanic. And while torpedoes typically have a longer locking cycle, on a Polaris, it kind of makes sense. You could either choose to run away or start another approach after you've launched your torpedoes. It's better suited for a ship that's smaller and less durable, like the Polaris. The Idris can take a beating. The Polaris probably can't. This is also going to let you lock on, fire, and evade, and you may even be able to get off 2 or 3, barrages of torpedoes before you actually get to your target. Now, another factor is probably going to be power consumption. Railguns in most games use a lot of power. They're a power-hungry device. They typically generate a lot of heat. And in the Polaris, you're already powering 3 large shields and 6 engines, plus a lot of turrets that are all over this thing. So it just may not have the power to effectively power and run a railgun and keep up its speed and agility. Now, there may be different mechanics that they could put in where you end up just killing the, power to your engines, you're coasting in, then you power up your railgun, but that's not a real smart gameplay mechanic either. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're actually seeing, torpedoes versus the railgun. Now, focusing on attacking, that's kind of the role I envision of the Polaris. There's 2 real ways it could go. It's either a fast attack craft for capital ships or it's a deterrent for anybody else that's coming in. So if you're talking about that focus on attacking, having 4 size 10 torpedoes is going to deal the maximum damage that you can possibly carry on this ship. It's got the capability to really jump in and surprise those that aren't ready to respond. And if you jump in and you pop up on somebody's radar and somebody's not ready, they're not going to be able to just get up and get out immediately. They're going to have to scramble people to stations, get people into turrets, recall any fighters, and you may have the time to get in there and launch those torpedoes pretty quick. And another thing is, torpedoes are kind of a weapon that are going to let you fight above your weight class. A railgun is likely going to be best suited for ships that you're engaging of equal or smaller sizes. Torpedoes are something that can really fit on a variety of ship sizes, but end up dealing a lot of damage. So, regardless of whether you're taking down their shields completely, there's a lot of that splash, and you're able to get a lot of them off at the same time. And it doesn't matter, if you hit the hull, that explosion damage, you may get some of that decompression, you may be able to hit different components. A railgun's going to penetrate and go through a whole bunch of stuff, but you get that splash damage that's associated with torpedoes. And they're probably also better suited to dealing damage to facilities and not just ships. So you're talking about, incursions into enemy territories. A railgun, yeah, you're going to be able to knock down the front door, no problem. But if you're trying to take out multiple components, being able to launch multiple torpedoes in different locations kind of gives you some of that anti-facility type of gameplay. And then speaking of gameplay, I think some of it just comes down to diversity in gameplay. The torpedoes are different from what we see in the other capital ship offerings. You got something like the Javelin where you have a bunch of STS turrets. On the Idris, you've got the railgun plus fighters. And then on the Polaris, you've got, turrets plus torpedoes. It just gives us a different variety and a different way to engage in combat in this type of category of ships. So That's kind of my impressions on why they went this way. I don't really know, but I think it kind of makes sense. If you guys have thoughts on why it ended up being Torpedoes, let me know. But I think it's just kind of an interesting topic because I think a lot of us were expecting something different until we started getting more information. But the more I kind of think about the ship, the more I'm kind of excited about that, depending, again, on what ends up happening with the turrets on board the ship. So I apologize for the voice today. I'm probably not going to make another video until I get it back to normal. So if you see a little bit of a lag in content, that's going to be why. But I'll be ready to rock as soon as my voice is. So have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.